Hey, well,
Hey, what's up?
okay, I'm gonna get set up. Let me know if you need anything.
All right.
Welcome, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We are thrilled to have all of you join us today. My hope is that this webinar helps equip you with just really invaluable insights as you complete your application. My name is Marcy Donez, and I'm the Senior Director of the Yass Prize. This is our fifth webinar this year, just trying to shed a light on what we're looking for and make this application process as smooth and easy for you as possible. I'm so happy you're all here with us in this space. My colleague Will is also on and will be supporting in the chat. I'm excited to share more about the third tenet of our STOP acronym today, which is outstanding. We're really going to focus on that one short answer question in the application. Tell us how you know your work is outstanding and provide us with data that points to and demonstrates that bar as you've defined it. So we'll dig into this principle with awardee examples to explore what that looks like in action. And we also have two wonderful alumni with us from this past year, Mike Felton, the superintendent of St. George Municipal School District, and Brennea Fairchild, the founder and executive director of the Melanin Village. And so you'll get to hear what this principle means to them before we do a Q&A at the end as well. We also encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat right now, share who you are, where you're calling in from, and then if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature for this and don't put it into the chat directly. We will use this at the end just to make sure we're monitoring all the questions that have come in. Okay. And since eligibility criteria are really clearly outlined in the application, we will not be addressing eligibility during the Q&A section. If you meet these criteria, then you're eligible. So if you just read through and you're like, yep, you're eligible. The bigger question that I find people ask about eligibility revolves around whether you should take the time to apply. And my encouragement for each of you is that as the lead applicant, you are the best position to know if you should. But we want to encourage you to only take that 4 to 6 hours to complete the application. I'm sure people could take a lot longer, but we really want you to be able to just hone in on the things that make your organization really unique and outstanding and share that quickly in the application and get it in. Okay, so what do we mean by outstanding? Outstanding education providers demonstrate their success first and foremost through the demand of the students and families they serve and the day-to-day outcomes, which can be shown through retention, test scores, activities, awards, all sorts of different metrics. But the ultimate measure of success is whether students are persistent, whether they move on to the next grade or school, and whether they enter productive careers or higher education pathways of their choosing. And one key thing I really want everyone to take away from this webinar is that you don't need to have specific metrics in your application. Like we're not looking for one key thing, but you do need to have metrics that are specific. It can be qualitative, it can be quantitative. That doesn't matter as long as you are really clear. So I would encourage everyone to just strip away any flowery language. Don't bury the lead. Say why you're outstanding and get right into it. That is what will really showcase the work you're doing best. So let's take a look at what this has looked like with a couple of our past awardees before I open it up to Mike and Brennea. So the first example I have is Build Up, which is a college workforce high school in Birmingham, Alabama. They were a 2022 semifinalist. When reading their application, Mark dove right into statistics, sharing 90% student retention, 30% growth on standardized tests in year one. All students attain at least 6 post-secondary credits by the end of year 3 of school. 100% of students are on grade level by the end of year 4 of school. 100% employment or a 4-year enrollment post-graduation. Graduates from Build Up also have a 90% owner occupancy, meaning they own their home, and that's built into the program. And the homes they work on have a 50% housing increase in 5 years, meaning that there's increased equity for students and increased wealth long-term. And those are just really powerful statistics. And he just like, boom, hopped in, shared them. And that was what made his application really stick out in terms of being outstanding. The second example here is Detroit Achievement Academy, a 2023 finalist. They have graduated 3 classes of 8th graders, and 100% of students have gotten into their top choice high schools. Not only did their entire 8th grade class get accepted into Grand Valley State University tuition free for 3 years in a row when they're ready, since they're in 8th grade, but this past year, their families were also accepted as well, which is just huge. Detroit Achievement Academy also measures outstanding and the demonstrated demand of their school on their long wait list. And they also measure the quality of work that students produce. They measure the sense of belonging at the student level and a full range of other somewhat informative assessments. Another example from the 2022 semifinalist pool is Father Judge High School. They're a faith-based high school in Philadelphia. They have really incredible career tech education pathways, and their metrics look a lot different from some of the other ones I've mentioned. 100% of their graduating welders receive lucrative jobs starting at around $75K a year. And more than 100 students have graduated from their welding program since its inception. And Father Judge really arms students with both a diploma and a certification needed for an in-demand job. And they plan to double over the course of the next few years. And so those things together were the metrics that they shared in their application that aligned to their definition of outstanding in the education they're providing students. And then my fourth example is Cristo Rey, which is an independent Catholic school network. Cristo Rey schools are built on the commitment to providing students with the least economic means a pathway fused with the support to help pay for their education and gain valuable 21st century work experience that set them on a course for future success. Their students have a 100% college acceptance rate and a 94% matriculation rate to fall enrollment, which exceeds the college enrollment percentage of the highest income quartile of students in the United States. And students from Cristo Rey complete college at more than twice the rate of their peers in the same income quartile. So the mentoring and the work study program that all students engage in really is set up to propel students to be outstanding and thrive in college and in the future workforce. So I share these examples. I could keep going. There are so many amazing examples of the work that awardees are doing. But from these, I want to highlight that there are so many different metrics that you can use to illuminate what you are doing and why you provide the type of education you provide. We aren't looking for one thing, but we are excited to learn about the ways you measure outstanding and how you know that's happening. Okay, I'm about to get to Mike and Renee, but a few key pieces of information that are also available in the application or on yassprize.org. Our application deadline is April 18th at noon Eastern time, and there will not be any extensions. So do not wait until April 18th. Get your application in as soon as possible to avoid any tech issues. We will announce the 50 semifinalists on September 5th via a live stream. And our second annual Yass Summit will be in New York City on September 12th. All semifinalists will attend the Yass Prize Accelerator in Miami the week of October 14th. There, you'll engage in development, build your network and connections, and deliver your 3-minute pitch. And then the 2024 finalist and the $1 million Yass Prize winner will be announced at the gala on November 7th in Washington, D.C. For awardees, it is mandatory to attend the summit, the accelerator, and the gala, and those dates, again, are in the application, so just mark them on your calendar now. Okay, now for our panel. This is the most exciting part of the webinar because our awardees from the last year are truly doing outstanding work, and I can talk about it and I can share examples, but they're living it, and so I'm really excited to get into this conversation with them. I will stop sharing my screen. Okay, and I would love for y'all to just give a 1-minute overview of who you are, where you work, and what you do. Renee, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Mike.
Hi there. So glad to be here. Welcome to all potential applicants. My name is Renea Fairchild. I am the founder and executive director of the Melanin Village. The Melanin Village is on a mission to increase the educational opportunities and outcomes for Black and Brown youth by helping their families to provide a world-class education at home. in true stop fashion. So, the sustainable, transformative, outstanding, and permissionless. We really lean into being permissionless. And so our programs look a variety of ways depending on where we are. So we're a nationwide program, and we tap into different sources of funding depending on the states to be able to provide the programs that our learners need. So that's everything from like a wraparound homeschool program to online homeschool support and community to more traditional school-based models. So that's who I am and what we do in a nutshell. And I am a finalist from 2023.
Hi, my name is Mike Felton. I'm the superintendent for St. George Municipal School Unit. We are a public school district in a rural community in Maine, a traditional fishing community. We only have about 300 students in our district. We operate a K-8 school, pre-K to 8 school of 200 students. In our whole community on a peninsula, Maine, there are about 3,000 year-round residents. The core of who we are is we're a community school, and hands-on, minds-on learning has always been sort of key to what we do and who we are. So we've partnered with our regional technical high school, Midcoast School of Technology, to develop the nation's first pre-K through 12 career and technical education program. And for what that means at the pre-K to 8 level, that's hands-on, minds-on technical learning that's connected to career and community. So we had students this fall working with a local contractor, 6 and 7-year-olds, and they were measuring 2x4s and cutting them to length with saws. We've had elementary students building wooden toolboxes. We have middle school students 3D designing different projects in their classes. And we've got middle level students that are building boats with one of our partners. So it's really connecting the public education with career and with community. And in those partnerships, we think that's sort of where the magic happens. I'm a 2023 finalist with Brenea. And really honored and grateful to be with her today. And I'll just say one of the most amazing parts of the whole Yass Prize experience is the people you get to meet through it. It's really inspirational. And when you're surrounded with other people who have these innovative ideas and this commitment and this drive, it'll re-energize you for the work.
Thanks, y'all. This makes me so much more excited to get in the conversation with you. I'd love to start with a question of how you set expectations to cultivate outstanding outcomes. And this looks probably different depending on which person you're talking to here, but I'd love to know that. So how do you set expectations to cultivate outstanding outcomes? Mike, let's start with you this time, and then we'll go to Brenea.
Yeah, so I thought about this a little bit and basically a slogan, and any slogan has its gaps, but it can maybe help capture a piece of it, which is believe it, live it, share it. And I think the biggest thing is for those expectations, especially if you're trying to push the boundaries, you got to believe it in your heart. And when it really works is if what you believe in your heart lines up with your organizational and your community's heart. I think that's sort of tapping into that and using that to set those expectations. Part of the reason we've been able to be the first in the nation in creating this pre-K through 12 CTE program is it really connected with our core identity as a community. Sort of a do it yourself, use your hands and your mind to figure things out. So connecting that expectation to be the first to do something, but relating it back to who we are as a community, that helped give us the courage to sort of make this jump. Live it is, I think as everyone out there knows, you got to be willing to give a lot. And to do this work, it takes a price and it takes a lot of time and energy. And it's, this morning we did a big groundbreaking ceremony where during the ceremony, I'm in a suit and tie and I'm talking to the community. At 5 a.m, I was setting up the tents outside because it was raining today. And it's like, you got to be willing to go from, ground A all the way through, ground Z, the whole spectrum to get the work done and people to see you do that and know that you'll do the big picture stuff, but you also be on the ground doing the work. And then share it. I think there are 2 pieces of that. One is you gotta share that vision and those expectations so they're clear with other people and they know what they're working towards, but you also got to share the spotlight. It can't just be about you. Like in our ceremony today, 90% of it was teachers and kids talking about the work they're already doing, the different hands-on, minds-on work. And then it becomes, it's not your expectation or your standard. It is the community standard. And that is so much more powerful and lasting.
Really well said, Mike. Such a joy to be here with you today. So I love the slogan, believe it, live it, share it. And I might just kind of build, and I might just add one thing in that kind of beginning point, which is clarifying what the it is, right? Like, what does it mean to be outstanding? And Marcy kind of pointed to that, where what outstanding outcomes looks like for your community and the learners that you're serving, and the work that you're doing will look differently than it does for my community or Mike's community or anyone else's community. And so getting really clear about what the it's is then allows you to uphold those expectations. And a part of that clarity work links to that third point Mike said, which is kind of like sharing the spotlight. The clarity work is hearing from your community about what they want to hear and see. I know, Mike, even a part of your community's experience of like breaking off from the larger district is because they wanted to bring back shop, right? So it's like the community clarifying what does outstanding look like for them. And then saying, okay, and now we could go ahead and believe it with our whole heart, live it out, and then share it widely. And so I think just kind of like taking the time to do that work and even using this application process as a way to kind of like brain dump, get it all out of your mind of like, what really are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how will we know that we're doing it well? And then once you can kind of answer those questions, that's how you know, okay, we're in the zone of doing our outstanding work. And this is how we can hold others in our community to the expectations to be able to uphold that outstanding standard.
So helpful to hear both of your perspectives on it. And you honestly both answered my second follow-up question, which is how do you measure outstanding? It's by thinking about what your community would share as outstanding. I think my follow-up for that is, do you find that these measures have evolved or changed since you've landed on that initial what outstanding means to y'all, and how has that impacted your work? And then Brene, we'll start with you and then go to Mike.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say definitely, especially because we are not in a traditional school model. And so our model focuses on both like preparing and equipping parents to be highly effective educators, and then also making sure that their children are seeing the outcomes that we want them to see. And so it's very two-pronged. And we started first focusing on parents and then growing to our focus on students. And so we saw that type of evolution. But it also has been from hearing from parents about like, what do they want to see? Like, why are they actually choosing to homeschool? Why are they actually choosing to use things like ESA funds, and saying like, what is outstanding for them? And then saying, okay, just like anything, like, do you have a successful life? It's determined by what you want, like what you determine as to be successful. And so it's very much so the same things with our parents and with our community, of saying, okay, what is most important, and knowing that it's going to evolve as the demands of society evolves, as people's personal preferences evolve. So I would definitely say it has evolved, and I think it's a really good thing that it's evolved.
One thing, an inspiration I take from Brenea's work is, the importance of focusing on parents and the power of parents to drive change. And I think when you're looking at your measures, it's really important, essential to bring parents and families into that conversation. So, we in our measures we use the combination of stories, anecdotal, and also data, and also research showing that this type of model works. Those measures have absolutely evolved. So we started off with a vision for this 9 years ago, and that vision has certainly evolved over that time, and it's really started to crystallize a little bit over the past 3 years, when we've gotten into the heart of the project and written our grant applications and have been working with donors to raise funds and actually designing the actual building. And I think, thinking about this question, I feel like that it will evolve. At some point, it's going to sort of stabilize and settle to some degree. And I think that's important because you want some measures over time that are going to give you like that longitudinal data to show the impact you're having ultimately on your kids' lives. And something that we're shifting our focus on, that we want to use long term, is what are our kids doing after they graduate? Because ultimately, more than any standardized test score or anything else, it's how are they living their lives when they get out of school. So we want to know in terms of their career, are they able to do work that they enjoy and they love, and support their family and live when they want to live. And we've started to collect that type of data from our alumni. And we're going to use that to inform the other data we have around standardized testings, surveys on academic performance, social emotional learning, character development, and piecing that all together. And just the last piece I'd say is, in the end, whether it's anecdotal or whether it's just hard metric data, you've got to pull it together in a story, and it's got to tell a story, and it's got to be a compelling story. That's the power of data. Otherwise, it's just numbers. When you pull it together in a story, then it has the power to move people and change people.
You're leading right into that next question too, which is, how did you tell your story? How did you highlight your organization's outstanding approaches and metrics in your application? What was your approach to that? Mike, since you started to talk about it, we'll start with you and then go to Renea.
Yeah, so we rooted it first in our history. And so as Marcy noted, and I think Brene noted as well, or Brene noted it, that we broke away from a larger school district to create our own municipal school district. And part of that was because, essentially the parents wanted more control of the education, the community wanted more control of the education of their children. And the parents wanted their students to have access to shop class that we had lost through the process of consolidation and merging into these larger districts. So we talked about that, and part of that went all the way back to this nonprofit in our community that existed in 1936 all the way to the early 2000s that provided shop and home ec. So we told sort of the story of our community and how that evolved into us breaking away. And we talked about some of the votes in the different referendum that occurred, and the huge support for us breaking away, and then also the support for us building, raising the money to build this building. And I think bringing together again those anecdotal stories of like individual students and the impacts it's had on their lives, from kids like who stopped coming to school, who now are going to school and fully engaging, pairing that, like what I said, with the research and data that's showing the impact of career and technical education, and then bringing in some of the survey data on our students' social emotional growth and our parent engagement. Because part of the trick for us is, we haven't created our building yet. So we're doing some of this work, but we haven't created the building that's going to let us really amplify and grow this. And we're doing it with pre-K to 8 kids. So as we're starting out creating it, it's hard to collect the data. So we had to really think about how to do that. Like I said, it was a combination of individual stories, anecdotes, what metrics we had, and the research showing that this model works. So I think that's sort of how we work to illustrate the story.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I would think, like, I know everyone here is thinking like, okay, I'm preparing for this application. How can I do this? Maybe you're a newer organization and you don't have a story yet, or you don't feel like you know what your story is yet. Or maybe you're like, okay, how do I actually form this into 250 words? I saw that question in the chat. And so my advice there would be to like tell your story in a sentence. Okay. So when I'm thinking about, the student that grew from, the 3rd grade reading level to a 5th grade reading level, that's all I'm saying. I'm saying it in one sentence. Students like Aaron, who this, and this, and you get it out in a sentence and you move on to the next thing. And so when you're thinking about telling it, again, you have a short amount of space to say, look, we're doing great work. And that's what you want to focus on as a part of the application process, where we get the opportunity to review other people's applications. And you can tell the difference between people who went straight to answering the question and giving strong answers to what the question was, versus a really long, flowery approach. And then maybe they get to 1 or 2 things that are outstanding. And so when you're thinking about telling what's outstanding, and our approach was, I just kind of was like, what are the 5 outstanding things, outcomes that we've seen? And I'm going to make sure there's at least those 5 sentences, and we're going to find a way to link them together. And so remembering that the purpose of the application is that they just kind of want to hear that you are doing outstanding work. And so that's what you want to say really, really clearly. And so I think, like Mike said, once you kind of do that work and you know what stories you could possibly tell, the data points, whether they're your data points because you've done the work already, or they're data points that proves that this model works because in other contexts it has worked. You should have those 3, those pieces, and then say, all right, these are the 5 to 7 things I'm going to say. And then I'm going to put transition sentences so that they all link together. And those are my outstanding outcomes.
Yeah, I think Brene said that perfectly. You got to get to the point. One thing that the Yass Prize is going to teach you is, like, Get rid of all the extra stuff, any of the flowery stuff, and you get right to the point and you lead with your most powerful point. And I think in all of your answers, you got to do that. And it actually takes a lot longer to write something short and concise to the point rather than basically a thought piece where you can see the person's thinking evolving in front of you. Like you're not going to have time for that or space for that in the application, and you ain't going to have time for that in your pitch. So I think by going through this process, it'll force you to dig down to the core pieces and the heart of what you're doing. And that's what people care about. So whether you're talking to the Yass Prize, another foundation, your parents, your students, or another potential funder, like going through that process is incredibly valuable.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think I'll just lean into what you're saying, Mike, is like to let this be an opportunity in itself, like an exercise in itself. So not just for the ends of getting the Yass Prize, which is an awesome honor, but then also just saying like to be able to think these things out, to kind of get the word vomit out and then be able to distill it. It impacts you in every single conversation that you have afterward, because you're really able to kind of give those points and the pieces that are most important.
Exactly.
Such great advice. And that's my like last question before we get into the Q&A. And I'll ask y'all to stay here for the Q&A because you are likely best positioned to answer some of those. But what advice or last words of wisdom would you give applicants that are looking to hone in on maybe many of the services and programs that they offer?
Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah. Can I just clarify, Marcia, are you saying what advice would I give to them? Could you ask the question one more time? I just want to make sure I understand.
Absolutely. And you could go either way. What advice or words of wisdom would you give applicants generally? And then if you have someone that's doing so many amazing things and they're just like, I don't even know where to start, what advice would you give them to hone in on what makes them really unique?
Oh, yes. Okay, great question. So in general, I would say be shiny from the beginning. And by that I mean, when Mike said get to the point, it's like whatever is your biggest claim to fame, like maybe you were, on your local news station, maybe a parent said this changed their life, maybe a dropout came back to school, like whatever, it could be one thing that that like that thing is a thing that when you're having a hard day, you think like put it out there first and repeat it again and again, because it becomes a part of your story. It helps your story stick in other people's brains. And to say like, oh yeah, I see how this person can kind of fit into this community, into this impactful work that we're doing. So I think I just would say that like lead with what really makes you special and don't feel like, oh, should I say it? Maybe I'll say it here. I'll bury it here. Like, no, make it the first thing. So that's the first thing I would say, which is like, you're doing amazing work. You know that you're doing amazing work, and your one job in this application is to communicate that to the others who will be reading your application. So that's kind of my encouragement. Like lean into the fact that you're doing amazing things and say it with joy and with gladness, knowing that that's what we're asking for. Like it's being asked to let that shine. So that's the first. And to the second question about thinking about how to, I guess, sort of distill, especially when everything is going on, I think I'd say if you could kind of hone on either what has the most evidence or what thing you feel like you could speak about the most passionately. And I resonate with this question because our organization does a lot of different things. And when I have 10 minutes to talk to someone, I will share it all. When I have 30 seconds, I've come up with a phrase or two to say it in 30 seconds. And so it will be an exercise. And maybe you're saying, we do, for us, it's coaching, curriculum, and community building, right? It's 3 words that coaching is its whole own really huge thing. And same thing with community, same thing with curriculum. They were like really big houses, but I don't have to break all of those things down. We break it down into 3 words. And so I think say what you do, but then just make sure that like your reader or listener won't get lost in the journey. And as much as you can, get other people's feedback and just saying like, hey, does this make sense? And someone who doesn't know you, like, or someone who doesn't know your work very well, that's also very effective, because then something that you realize is clear to you is not clear to anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I mean, the only thing I'd add is, it builds off what Brene was saying, is you got to have a focus, because a lot of people we're a public school, we're doing everything from cleaning kids' teeth with partnerships with different dentists, to building toolboxes, to teaching reading, to feeding them food, like lunch every day. You got to pick like the thing like Renee said, that sums it all up. And that thing should align with your passion, because it's your passion, clearly articulated and with the data and the facts that will move people in your writing, and then ultimately when you're, if you get to that level, when you're giving your pitch, and it's going to give you the energy to stick with it, get through the whole application, because there's a lot. I've never done an application. I've written a lot of grants. I've never done an application quite like the Yass Prize application. But even doing that application, it did force me to like hone in more and more and more to like, what is my core message? And I would just say, like, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of space. So like, figure out what that is, and lead with it and stick with it, and keep the reader focused on it. Because, people, and I think it's just a good skill to have in the time we live in, because we're all bombarded with information. You got to give that person something that's going to stick. And so it's got to be clear, it's got to be sort of pithy, but it's got to have heart behind it, because that's ultimately what inspires people, and that's what will inspire you and to shine through in the grant application and when you're talking to people about it. So, I think Renee said the rest perfectly, and that would just be my piece: is you keep that focus. Is you can go in a lot of different directions, but figure out what your focus is and stick with it.
Mike, you saying that reminds me of this exercise. I think it was like 6th grade. I did this exercise and we had to come up with our epithets, right? So it was like, Zeus, the god of, I don't know, thunder, right? Like it's comma, what's your comma? And so just realizing that among 2,000 plus applicants, what's behind your comma in that 3 to 5 words? And if you can have that, right? Like mine's the Melanin Village, right? Coaching and community for Black and Brown homeschooling families, right? It's so like if you can just kind of have your epithet, like what is that? And then that is, like Mike said, that's the thing you want to focus on and repeat all throughout the application.
So powerful. Okay, I'm going to take us into our questions, and I think some of them are actually great for y'all to jump in and share your perspective on too. So let's start with, if you're an ed tech company with an early stage product that is going through impact measuring, how would you recommend we tell our outstanding metric story? Are growth, reach, scale impacts useful? Are you looking for impact metrics? Okay, do either of you want to share your perspective here? I'm also happy to hop in.
Go ahead, you can go, Mike.
I think, I think the impact metrics are great. I think if you can show the growth of the product, that's great. All those metrics, again, need to feed into the story. I would think about, showing why this product is scalable, because, that's going to be key. And why is it important to scale it? Like, what is that magic at the core of it? So whatever metrics get you there to, what makes it special and how it's going to make a difference in kids' lives, and then showing evidence that it will scale. I would think, I don't run an ed tech company, but I would think that would be important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of opportunity also exists in the demand. So, right, showing that, people want what you have, and, you still have, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I remember the accelerator season. And I realized I needed a good data point that I was saying, hey, we're launching this new program and our parents need it. And so I just sent out a survey, and within a week I got 50 responses, and I was able to say like 49 of the 50 people said yes. Right. So even if you're right now, you're like, I don't have data, go get some. Right. Like the families that you're serving, the kids that you're serving, just kind of getting those data points that, again, tell the story that you want to be told, because that's the nice thing about the application. It's not an interview. It's not a back and forth. It's you saying, I know people need this. I know it's going to meet their needs because of this. And this is what we're doing to go ahead and solve it.
Yeah, and that's where I think you can supplement some of that if you're brand new, or you're working in a new area, or your project's just getting off the ground, is research that says, X amount of parents feel like this, or only 25% of students are engaged in class in a regular class, or 90% of students say they want more hands-on learning. Like that kind of data to supplement your more localized data can show that why this is needed, not only at your local level, but at a national level.
Absolutely. And I think y'all are starting to speak to this next question too, which is, I'm with a nonprofit that provides fellowship program to provide admin credentials to diverse teachers? Does all data need to be specific to students? And I think you were both kind of sharing, well, while some data could be specific to students and the impact on students, there's a wide range of data that could show the impact and the outstanding work that you're doing. So as long as you're clear on what that, how you are measuring outstanding, how you know there's demand and how you're meeting that in an outstanding way, that would meet the criteria of our question. Would either of you add anything to that?
I just think that, I mean, one, I think about Black and Latino male educators that, was a finalist this past year, and their work focuses on increasing the number of males in leadership position, Black and Latino males in leadership positions in education. So I know that those types of awardees are selected. And I would say that so it can be not just focused on students, but I would, just because your work is connected to students. So if you're not already looking at maybe it's not academic outcomes, but for the teachers that you're serving, how many learners are they reaching, right? Like, could you get some initial numbers on those types of things so that you even have a good idea of what your impact in the scope is? Because your work is impacting learners, and you should be able to make the connection about how your work impacts learners.
Absolutely. Okay, there's one more question here that's a little bit different from the outstanding, but I think it's still a great question. What does permissionless look like in a traditional school setting? Mike, I'm just going to take this one right over to you.
Yeah. So, I think we talked about that in terms of how we broke away. So, I mean, essentially, you could look at us as a community charter school. Our community basically said, we're not happy with the current system. We're going to create our own district and we're going to run it. And that's what they did. So they broke away, and it took 5 years of research, multiple referendum, navigating an intense state bureaucratic process that does not make breaking away from regional districts easy, because the state wanted to consolidate and have bigger districts. So that was sort of at the core of it. And then it was, we're a different community that weren't, we are a small working class fishing community. And it's, one thing I love about this place is it's a working class community where people are still doing pretty well. Like fishermen in the lobster fishery do pretty well. So you could see, and there aren't a lot of like strong, or there's certainly on a decline of strong working class communities in this country. So because of a variety of reasons, so to be able to be in a community and see that that the values of that working class community flourishing and still being rewarded financially for the work that they do, that's been powerful. And that's sort of, we're so small, we don't fit into any box. So this whole time we've had to make up things as we go. And because we don't fit, we're sort of not afraid to take risks and to do things differently. And that ultimately led to us saying, okay, and we've had, I don't know how many reporters over the years have asked me, why do you think your school, your small school, can transform public education? Isn't this dream pretty big for your kids? And our response is like, yeah, it is big. And if you're not dreaming big for your kids, you're not doing your job. So I think in terms of that, like, I don't care whether you're public, private, charter, homeschool network, ed tech company, it goes to the core of like, are you willing to do whatever it takes for your kids? And I think we all realize the current system has some pretty serious flaws that need to be corrected. And how are you, finding ways to correct it no matter what? I mean, to me, that's the permissionless part. And, and I know other public school educators who feel the same way, that they're willing to do whatever it takes. And if you got to bend or break the system sometimes to get there for your kids and your families, you do it. And again, like, that's part of the beauty of the Yass Prize, is when I had that time with the accelerator, with these other group of people who had that same drive, like, we're going to do whatever it takes. Everybody's thinking outside the box. Man, it'll energize you. And they are every type of school and organization you can imagine.
Thanks, Mike. And if y'all are interested in learning about a couple of other public schools that are also awardees and just seeing more of what that could look like, I'd encourage you to go look up Randolph Eastern School Corporation or Northern Cass, St. George Municipal School. You can still read more and kind of see the different ways that they are doing work in a really outstanding permissionless way. Okay. There's one question that I think is really easy to answer, which is how many awards are given for an application period. This year, we have 50 semifinalist awards. So 50 organizations will be semifinalists and will get a minimum of $200,000. Of those 50, 9 more of them will be finalists and get $500,000, and one of those 50 will be the winner and get a $1 million prize. So that is what it is this year, which is a little bit different from last year even. Okay, and then I'll go down a little bit. It looks like there are 2 questions on specific org types. So it looks like nonprofit is an option under organization type, and we are a nonprofit and residents at a local public school. So you would put yourself as a nonprofit and not a traditional public school, since you are technically a nonprofit there. If you have questions though, please reach out at info@Yass Prize. We're happy to get back to you as quickly as we can to make sure that if you have a specific to you question, you get that answered as well. And the same thing. Okay, great. Wonderful. And that looks like those are the majority of our questions. We just had one more come in. Are there restrictions on how the award can be used? And can they be used for capital expenditures or new construction? What I would share is that depending on what you put as your future impact in your application, we really hope that the award money, if you're awarded, is helping you achieve that future impact. And so that can look a lot of different ways. And I've seen that go, I mean, with every award letter I've read, it's been a little bit different and specific to the school. And so we do hope to make sure that those 2 things link really, really clearly. But I have seen people use it towards buildings and making sure there are more seats for kids. So that is something that is possible. Yeah. Okay. That looks like it's it. Mike and Brene, thank you so much for being here. It's been lovely to just get to hear from you. So much wisdom and insight was shared. Thank you so much. If for everyone else, thanks for coming as well. We have office hours every Thursday at 1 p.m. You do not have to pre-register. Just come, show up. We're there. Or if you have questions, you can also email them to info@yassprize.org. Thank you so much. Mike and Brene, if you can stay for just a second to take a quick picture, and then we'll be done. Great.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, 1 second. Okay, ready? Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you both and see your faces.
Yes, what a joy.
Renee, always a pleasure.
Good to see you, Mike. Yeah,
Bye,
good
all.
to see you. Bye.
Take it easy.